Marina pushed open the door to her small apartment, her shoulders heavy from a long day. The hallway light flickered, casting a tired glow over the peeling wallpaper. She set down her battered tote bag and sighed, rubbing the ache from her neck. She had just finished her second shift at the diner, where she had spent the evening serving late-night coffee to strangers who never asked her name. Each tip she earned tonight was small, just a few coins tucked into the saucer, but she gathered them carefully, counting them over and over until she had enough to help pay her rent next week. She switched on the single lamp in the living room, its soft light revealing a threadbare sofa, a rickety coffee table, and stacks of unpaid bills on a chipped wooden chair. The apartment was cramped, but it was hers, and she was proud of how she kept it neat. She only had enough money for the bare essentials: rent, electricity, and a little food. Sometimes she skipped meals so she could cover her bus fare to work. Her dreams of returning to college felt distant now, but she clung to them like a fragile leaf in autumn wind. Marina crossed to the window and drew aside the curtain. Beyond, rain pattered steadily on the pavement. Night had fallen early under storm clouds, and the streetlight pool outside flickered like a tired eye. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, intending to heat some water for tea, when movement caught her eye. A dark car stood at the curb, its front bumper resting on the curb as if in a hurry to get away. The engine was off, but inside, she saw a man hunched over the steering wheel. Beside him stood a little girl, her raincoat bright yellow against the dark street. She was shivering, hugging herself as the rain soaked her boots. Marina opened her door and stepped out onto the landing. The chill air rushed in, and she called softly, "Hello, are you all right?" The man looked up, his face pale and drawn. His eyes held fatigue, but there was a gentleness in them that made Marina's heart tighten. The little girl looked at Marina with big, brown eyes. She managed a small wave, then hugged her doll to her chest. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said, his voice low and nervous. "My car broke down, and I can't get a signal on my phone. My daughter and I just need to wait until it clears up." He glanced at the rain. "It's a bad night to be stuck on the road." Marina felt a tug in her chest. She remembered nights like this from her own childhood, waiting in the dark, feeling scared and cold. She swallowed, thinking of her own empty belly and the stack of bills waiting at home. Still, she could not turn away. "You can wait inside," she said as kindly as she could. "It's warm there." The man's shoulders relaxed for the first time. "Are you sure? I shouldn't impose." "You're not imposing," Marina replied. She glanced up at the little girl, whose wet hair stuck to her forehead in damp curls. "Come on, both of you, I have tea, and maybe we can call a tow truck." They followed her inside. Marina closed the door carefully behind them, then checked the lock. She led them to the small living room and gestured toward the sofa. The man settled onto one end, placing Lily gently against his side. She tucked the blanket she kept for emergencies around Lily's shoulders. Then she went to her kitchenette corner to boil water. As the kettle began to hum, Marina returned to them with 3 mismatched mugs, each chipped at the rim. She poured the hot water into tea bags she had bought on sale earlier that day. The sweet scent of mint and honey rose in the air. She handed a mug to the man and one to Lily, whose chubby fingers wrapped around it as if it were the warmest gift. Marina took the last mug and sipped slowly, letting the warmth chase away the cold. The girl held her mug with both hands, humming softly. Marina saw Lily's doll lying forgotten on the coffee table. She picked it up and offered it back. "Here you go," she said gently. "Don't let her get soaked." Lily's face lit up. "Thank you," she whispered. She hugged the doll and then looked back at Marina. "My name is Lily." "I'm Marina," she said, kneeling beside the sofa. "It's nice to meet you, Lily." She smiled, and Lily smiled back, revealing a gap between her 2 front teeth. Mr. Lewis, Marina learned this was his name, watched them with gratitude. "Thank you for letting us in," he said. "I didn't know where else to go." Marina shrugged. "I live alone," she said softly. "I know what it's like to get stuck." She looked at her small kitchen and back at them. "I don't mind." They sipped their tea quietly. Rain drummed on the roof in a steady rhythm, but inside the apartment felt cozy. Marina thought of the drafty bus stops she'd waited under, late at night, wishing someone would offer shelter. Now she was the one offering shelter, and the feeling inside her chest swelled with a strange warmth. It was sharp, like hope. After a few minutes, Lily leaned against her father's arm, her eyelids heavy. "I'm sleepy," she murmured. Marina smiled. "You can sleep here," she said, pointing to the small bed in the next room. "I can sleep on the couch." She hadn't planned for guests, but she would make space. She led Lily into the tiny bedroom. The single bed was covered with a flowered quilt, its stitches loose in places. Marina gently lifted Lily into the covers and tucked the quilt around her small frame. She sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed Lily's hair from her forehead. "Sweet dreams," she whispered. Lily closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, as if the bed held every comfort she needed. Marina tiptoed back to the living room. Mr. Lewis sat quietly in the dim light, staring at the window where the rain continued its steady dance. She held a mug of cooled tea, warming her hands. "I can try the tow truck again in the morning," he said without turning. "That sounds good," Marina replied. "It'll be daylight then. Easier to find help." He nodded. "I appreciate this more than you know." Marina shrugged again, but inside she felt proud. Despite her own worries, rent, bills, a future hanging by a thread, she had offered kindness. It was all she had to give. She leaned back on the couch, careful not to knock the mugs outside. Thunder rolled softly, and the night stretched ahead. Marina closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the exhaustion of her 2 jobs. But seeing Lily safe in her bed, and Mr. Lewis trusting her, she felt awake in a way she hadn't in months. She realized that in giving care, she had received something precious, a moment of connection that chased away her loneliness. She sipped the last of her tea, then set the mug on the table. She glanced at the photo on her wall, a picture of her mother smiling, arms around a younger Marina. Her mother had taught her that kindness always finds its way back, even when times are hard. Marina hoped her mother would have been proud. She stretched and rose from the couch, preparing to settle in. She would sleep lightly, ready to help in the morning. She threw an extra blanket over the arm of the sofa and positioned herself so she could hear any sounds. The wind rattled a loose window pane, but she felt safe as she drifted toward sleep. Marina thought of the stranger and his daughter. She didn't know his story or why he traveled so far. She only knew that tonight she had offered them shelter, and that act of kindness made her feel less poor, less alone. She realized that sometimes a small apartment and a warm heart could be enough to change someone's night, and perhaps, in ways she could not yet see, change her life too. Checked said. Marina woke before sunrise, her body aching from the thin couch but her mind bright with purpose. She peeked into the little bedroom. Lily lay curled under the quilt, breathing softly in her sleep. Marina pulled back the quilt to see the girl's peaceful face and smiled. She tiptoed back into the living room where Mr. Lewis sat at the coffee table, staring at the rain-black window. Steam rose from the mug in his hands, and he didn't notice Marina approach. "Good morning," she whispered. He looked up and returned the greeting with a kind nod. "I made more tea," Marina said, lifting the kettle from the counter. She poured hot water into his mug and filled her own. The air smelled faintly of honey and mint. Outside, dawn light crept through the curtains in pale strips. The storm had passed, leaving wet pavement and dripping leaves. Mr. Lewis sipped the tea. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You have a good heart, Marina." She glanced at him in surprise. She had not expected him to know her name so soon. He set down the mug. "I talked with Lily this morning. She said this was the nicest place she ever stayed. She even asked if she could draw you a picture." Marina smiled and held out her hand. "I'd love that." She returned to the coffee table and spread her arms in an open invitation. Lily appeared at the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She carried a small box of crayons and a sheet of blank paper. Her yellow raincoat hung on a chair like a flower left on a fence. Lily climbed onto the sofa next to her father and settled in. "Here," Marina said softly, handing her a pencil. Lily arranged the crayons around her and then placed the paper on the coffee table. She studied the scene thoughtfully. Sunshine broke through the clouds, painting the room in soft gold. Lily selected red first and began to draw a big heart in the middle of the page. Then she sketched 3 small figures under an umbrella. One figure was Marina, with curly hair and a kind smile. Another figure was Lily herself, holding her doll. The third figure was Mr. Lewis, drawn tall and strong. Marina watched each stroke. "You're very good at drawing," she said. Lily nodded seriously, her tongue poking out in concentration. The father watched too, pride in his eyes. When Lily finished, she colored the background green and blue, shapes that looked like grass and sky. Then she handed the paper to Marina. "It's for you," Lily said softly, "to say thank you." Marina gently hugged Lily and kissed her forehead. "Thank you, sweet girl," she whispered. She folded the drawing carefully and put it inside a book. "I'll keep it safe," she promised. Lily beamed and returned to her seat. Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. I never realized how much a small act of kindness could mean, he said. Marina shrugged. I just did what felt right. She glanced at the loose cabinet door that had bothered her for weeks. The cabinet beneath the sink leaned to one side, its hinge worn. She reached to set her mug down, and the cabinet door swung open, rattling. Mr. Lewis stood up before the noise had faded. He crossed the room and knelt next to the cabinet. Let me help with that, he said. He removed a small toolkit from his backpack. Marina blinked. She had not seen any tools in his car the night before. He fitted a new hinge screw with steady hands and aligned the door. It closed softly, smooth as new. He stood, brushed off his hands, and smiled. There, that should hold. Marina felt her heart lift. You're good at this, she said, amazed. He nodded as if it were nothing. I once did carpentry before moving into my work. He paused. It reminds me of home. He looked at the drawing Lily had made for Marina, then at the drawn cabinet behind them. He caught himself and laughed softly. Maybe I'm showing off. Marina shook her head. No, thank you. I didn't know how to fix it. She paused, considering. In her world, help always came at a price. Yet here was a stranger who offered kindness without asking anything in return. She remembered her mother's words, true giving has no price tag. She smiled at Mr. Lewis. You've helped me more than you know. They sat in comfortable silence until Lily tugged at her father's sleeve. Daddy, may I have another pancake, she asked. Marina had found enough batter yesterday to make 3. Now only 1 pancake remained. She laughed. I'll make more, she said. She moved to the kitchen corner and gathered ingredients, a small pouch of flour, an egg, and a bit of milk. She mixed them in her battered bowl, humming a tune she remembered from childhood. Lily watched, fascinated. Mr. Lewis joined Marina at the counter, asking questions about the recipe. She explained each step simply. Flour, egg, whisk, cook. Soon, the air filled with the sweet smell of cooking batter. Lily's eyes grew wide when Marina flipped the pancake with a gentle flick of her wrist. She pressed the pancake onto a plate and passed it to Lily, who clapped her hands in delight. They ate together at the coffee table. Lily sprinkled sugar on her pancake, making each bite sweet. Mr. Lewis savored his with a small pat on his stomach. Marina enjoyed hers, feeling the simple joy of sharing food with friends. The morning light grew stronger, lifting shadows from the room. After breakfast, Marina cleaned the dishes, while Mr. Lewis folded Lily's raincoat. Lily sat on the sofa, hugging her doll and humming. Marina noticed how tired the little girl still seemed. She offered Lily her own shawl to keep warm. Lily accepted, draping the soft cloth over her shoulders. Marina folded the dishes and stacked them neatly. She paused, glancing at the unpaid bills on the chair. Worry flickered again, but she pushed it aside. Today, she would worry about rent later. Right now, these moments of laughter and kindness mattered more. Mr. Lewis approached her gently. May I speak with you for a moment? He asked. She nodded and followed him to the window outside. The sky had cleared, leaving drops of rain on green leaves that glistened like jewels. He closed the distance between them. I want to thank you again, he said, not just for shelter, but for the warmth you've shown Lily and me. Marina looked into his eyes. You helped me too, she said softly. He studied her face, as if searching for meaning in her words. There was a moment of quiet understanding between them. Then he took a small envelope from his pocket. Marina's eyes widened. He held it out. For you, he said. A gift. She shook her head. I can't accept this. Her voice shook as she spoke. It was a check for a modest sum, enough to cover her rent and leave a little extra. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't take charity, she whispered. He smiled gently. This is not charity, he said. This is gratitude. You helped me find hope again. He placed the envelope in her hand. Remember Lily's drawing? You gave her something she could not buy. You gave her love. This is my thank you. Marina pressed her lips together. She had never owned a gift like this before. Her chest tightened as she remembered the nights she skipped meals to save money. She looked at the check and then at Mr. Lewis. His eyes were steady and kind. Slowly, she tucked the envelope into her pocket. Thank you, she said, voice soft but sure. He nodded and guided her back to the coffee table. Lily hopped off the sofa and ran to Marina. She held out her drawing. For you, Lily said again. Best friend. Marina knelt and hugged Lily, then twirled her in a gentle spin. The girl laughed, and Marina laughed too. Mr. Lewis watched them, pride shining in his gaze. For a moment, Time stood still and the small apartment felt like a palace filled with light. Later, as they prepared to leave, Lily held Marina's hand. "Will you come visit me?" she asked. Marina's heart swelled. "Yes," she promised. Mr. Lewis smiled and said, "I'll see you soon, too." They stepped outside into the bright morning, leaving Marina standing in the doorway with Lily's drawing in her hand and Mr. Lewis's gift in her pocket. As the bus carried them away, Marina closed the door and leaned against it. She slid down until she sat on her worn welcome mat, breathless from emotion. She held the drawing close and felt the envelope's weight against her thigh. Outside, the street glistened under the sun, and inside, Marina felt a new warmth in her heart. She knew her life was changing, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next with kindness and hope. Marina woke to a pale light filtering through her curtains. The room was quiet and still, as if the world held its breath. She stretched and rubbed her eyes, then swung her legs over the side of the couch. The pillow beneath her head still held the faint shape of Lily's hair from the night before. A soft weight landed on her foot. She looked down and saw a single red rose, its petals fresh and dewy. Next to it lay a small folded note, written in neat, slanted handwriting. She picked up the rose, careful not to bruise its petals, and then unfolded the paper. The note read, "Marina, your kindness gave us shelter and hope. Thank you for opening your home and your heart. With deepest gratitude." She pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her heart beat faster. No one ever thanked her like this before. She slipped the rose into a glass jar on her coffee table and tucked the note inside a drawer, where she kept important things. Slowly, she moved to the kitchen corner, where a few empty mugs and a plate waited. The sun rose higher, soft gold spilling onto the counter. She washed the dishes, her mind dancing between the quiet morning and the memory of Mr. Lewis's gentle smile. She thought of Lily's drawing to how the little girl had drawn Marina under an umbrella, safe from the storm. Marina smiled, remembering Lily's bright eyes. Once the dishes were clean, she walked to her front door. Outside, the sidewalk glistened from last night's rain. She saw footprints in the soft dampness, tiny footprints that reminded her of Lily. Marina knelt and traced them gently with her fingers. Then she stood and locked the door, her mind full of questions. Who was this man? Why did he choose her? She hoped someday she might learn more, but for now she felt a small glow inside her chest. Marina felt the weight of her rent notice again. She had tucked it under her pillow last night, telling herself she would face it today. She reached beneath the mattress and pulled out the envelope. Her fingers trembling, she tore it open and studied the number. Her heart sank. It was more than she had in her pocket. She pressed her lips together and took a deep breath. She could call her cousin for help, but pride kept her silence. She would figure it out on her own. She dressed quickly in the same faded jeans and a soft sweater she wore yesterday. The sweater smelled faintly of tea and warmth. She gathered her tote bag and stepped outside to catch the bus to her first job at the diner. As she passed the mailbox, she paused. On the corner lay a folded newspaper, caught in the wind. She picked it up and smoothed the front page. Bold letters read, "Local tech millionaire gives millions to charity." Below was a photo of Mr. Lewis, standing in front of a new community center, smiling broadly. Marina's breath caught. She stared at the face she knew so well, now famous, in black and white print. He wore a dark suit and a crisp white shirt, his arm around Lily, who beamed beside him. She felt both proud and uneasy. He had never mentioned his wealth. She slipped the paper under her arm and hurried to the bus stop before the next vehicle arrived. Her mind spun with wonder. Why did he hide his identity? Did he want to see real kindness? At the diner, the air was warm from ovens and coffee machines. She clocked in and tied her hair back with a frayed ribbon. Customers arrived for their morning coffee, bright and chatty. Marina poured cups and stacked plates, greeting each person with a quiet smile. Yet her thoughts kept drifting to Mr. Lewis and Lily. She remembered Lily's small hand in hers and the way the girl hugged her tightly. Before boarding the bus, she felt a gentle ache of longing. During a lull, she slipped the newspaper into a back pocket of her apron. She folded the rent notice in half and tucked it beside. She served a couple at a corner booth and watched their happy faces as they shared a pancake. She felt bittersweet. So many people enjoyed simple comforts while she worried about bills. She took a deep breath and focused on her work. She wanted to earn enough tonight to cover at least part of her rent. After her shift, she walked through a busy market on her way to the bus stop. Stalls of fresh fruit and bright flowers lined the street. She paused at a flower stand and picked up a small bouquet of wild daisies. Their white petals soft as clouds. The vendor nodded at her. "They're fresh today," he said. Marina smiled and paid with a few coins. She held the daisies close and continued home, imagining the bloom of hope they brought into her apartment. Back inside, she placed the daisies in a jar beside the rose from Mr. Lewis. She switched on her single lamp and sat at her tiny table. She unfolded the rent notice again, her fingers trembling. Then she remembered the check he had given her. She hadn't cashed it yet. She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. Her breath caught as she tore it open and found the check inside. It was for exactly the amount she needed to cover rent, and a little extra. Marina closed her eyes and let tears fall. No one had ever done something this big for her. She thought of her mother, who had always said kindness circles back. She pictured her mother's gentle smile and felt a wave of love. She slid the check into her purse and opened her banking app on her phone. With trembling fingers, she entered the numbers, then hit deposit. The app confirmed the amount would be available the next day. She leaned back and exhaled. A weight lifted from her chest. She picked up Lily's drawing and held it against her heart. Under the small figures drawn beneath an umbrella, she whispered, "Thank you, Lily." Then she placed the drawing on her wall where she could see it each day. It was her new treasure. That night, she prepared dinner for one. She cooked a modest meal of rice and vegetables, seasoning it with a pinch of salt and a drizzle of oil. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. The light from her lamp made shadows dance on the wall. But she no longer felt lonely. She had friends. Now, even if they lived far away, she had hopes again of returning to college, of building a stable life. Marina washed her plate and put it away. She lay on her couch and looked at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would call the tow company to thank them for their quick service. She would also call her cousin and tell her she was all right. But tonight, she closed her eyes with a gentle smile on her face. She felt gratitude for the kindness she gave and the kindness she received. As she drifted toward sleep, she thought of Mr. Lewis and Lily, riding the bus under a bright sky. She wondered what adventures lay ahead for them and for her. She felt a quiet excitement, a feeling that life could surprise her in wonderful ways, and in that soft hush before dreams, Marina felt safe, hopeful, and ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Marina woke to the dull hum of the morning air. Her small apartment felt too quiet. As if it held its breath, she slid off the couch and glanced around. The shower of daisies and the single rose by her window caught the early sun. Bright spots in her humble room. She smiled, remembering Lily's drawing taped beneath them. Its colors were fresh red heart, green grass, blue sky, and it made her heart ache with warmth. She walked to the kitchen counter and found her rent notice from last week still lying where she left it. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. The paper was thin, edges worn, every letter printed in bold black ink. Final notice. It told her she had 2 days to pay or face eviction. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had deposited Mr. Lewis's check last night, but her bank said funds wouldn't be available until tomorrow. That meant she had 1 day left, 1 day to find a solution. Marina set the notice down and leaned back against the counter. She thought of the kind stranger and his daughter. She thought of the check and Lily's drawing. She touched the small envelope in her purse as if it were a lifeline. A knot of worry tightened in her chest. She could only hope the funds would clear in time. She moved to her phone and dialed the local bank's customer service. Her heart pounded as she explained her situation. A mobile deposit made yesterday, funds pending, but rent due today. The voice on the other end was polite but firm. The deposit will clear in 1 business day, the agent said. There are no exceptions. Marina's throat went dry. She thanked the agent and hung up, her mind racing. She walked to the tiny bedroom where she had squeezed Lily's bed. The covers were neat, and here and there she saw Lily's doll peeking out. Marina imagined the little girl waking up here again. She felt a pang. She wished Lily could be here now, bringing sunlight wherever she went. But Lily was back with her father, safe. Marina pressed her hand against her heart, hoping that safety would return to her too. Marina returned to the living room and sat at her small table. The unpaid bills and rent notice felt like a mountain on one corner, and Lily's drawing glowed on the wall above. She wasn't sure which side to look at. She sipped lukewarm tea she had left on the table. The flavor was faint, but it reminded her of last night's warmth. She heard a soft knock at the door. Her heart leapt. She had not expected any visitors. She held her breath and stood, smoothing her hair and straightening the front of her sweater. The knock came again. Gentle but steady, she walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Outside stood Mr. Lewis, dressed in a neat coat, his dark shoes polished. Lily wasn't with him. Marina opened the door. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and calm. "May I come in?" Marina stepped aside. Of course. She closed the door behind him. Careful to catch the latch, she noted the clean curve of his coat and the quiet ring of his shoes on her floor. He stood in her small hallway, looking around as if he had never been inside before. "I wanted to return something," he said, lifting a small toolkit from his hand, and to talk. Marina's stomach twisted. She remembered how he fixed her cabinet door. She recalled how he showed no hint of wealth. Now he offered back his tools he must have carried for some purpose she did not yet know. She nodded quietly. He set the toolkit on her coffee table. Then he folded his hands and leaned against the back of her sofa. "I have something to tell you," he said. "I am not just an ordinary traveler." Marina's heart pounded. She pressed her lips together and waited. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card. On it was his name in elegant letters, followed by the name of a foundation. M. Lewis, founder, Horizon Hope Foundation. He handed the card to Marina. "I am the man in yesterday's newspaper," he said softly. "The one who funds community projects around our city." Marina's eyes widened. She stared at the card, then looked up at him. You're a millionaire," she whispered. Her voice caught in her throat. He nodded. "I have built several businesses," he continued, "but I have always believed that kindness matters more than wealth." He paused. "I watched you last night, Marina. You offered shelter without knowing who I was. You did not expect fame, money, or reward. You offered warmth to a stranger and his child because it felt right." Marina pressed her hand to her chest. She thought of the bills, the rent notice, the empty plates she served at the diner. She felt both proud and small. Proud that she had shown kindness. Small that she did not realize who he was. She swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, voice trembling. "Why hide your identity?" He looked at her with gentle eyes. "I wanted to know the truth of your heart. I wanted to see real kindness. Not kindness out of obligation or for praise. You gave shelter because you felt it in your heart, not because of the name on the door." He smiled faintly. "That is rare." Marina closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's words. Kindness circles back. She remembered Lily's bright smile. The way the girl had hugged her. She felt tears sting her eyes. I'm sorry I doubted you," she said softly. "I thought you were just passing through, like any stranger." He shook his head. "No need for sorry. You did exactly what you should. You have a good heart." He reached into his coat again and pulled out a small packet of papers. "I came to invite you," he said, handing the packet to Marina. "I want you to join our next project. We are starting a scholarship fund for students who have the drive to learn but lack the means. Just like you." Marina took the papers with trembling hands. She smoothed the crisp sheets. The words were simple. Guidelines for the scholarship program, criteria for applicants, details of the fund. She felt a rush of hope and disbelief. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'd like to help," he said. "Say you'd like to share your story and guide others." He pointed to the scholarship outline. "You understand their struggles. You can help design essays and mentor students. You can help them feel seen." Marina looked at the papers, then at Mr. Lewis. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, different from fear, different from worry or doubt. It was the warmth of possibility. She thought of her dreams to return to college, to build a life better than this one. She thought of Lily's drawing taped to her wall, a heart under an umbrella. She smiled through tears. "Yes," she said, firmly. "I would like that." He smiled too, relief and pride shining in his eyes. "Welcome aboard," he said softly. He reached out and gently squeezed her hand. The touch was warm, a silent promise of partnership. They sat together at the table, studying the scholarship plan. Outside, cars moved down the street, the world humming with life. Inside, Marina felt her world change. A stranger who became a friend, a little girl's drawing that became a symbol of hope, and a scholarship fund that would help others just like her. Later, as Mr. Lewis prepared to leave, he paused at the doorway. "Thank you, Marina," he said, "for your kindness, your trust, and your willingness to help others." Marina watched him go, then closed the door softly. She leaned against it, heart full. She slid to the floor and opened the packet again, reading the words with care. She reached for a pen and made notes in the margin. She felt ready to share her story, ready to help others, ready to embrace the future. And though the rent notice still lay on her counter, she knew it would no longer hold her back. She had something stronger now: purpose, partnership, and the power of kindness returned tenfold. ChatGPT said. Marina felt a new energy as she opened her door that morning. The sunlight shone brighter than she had seen in months. She clutched the scholarship papers in her hand and hurried down the narrow hallway. Her apartment felt different now. The daisies and the single rose by her window looked fuller, as if they sensed her hope. She took a deep breath and smiled. Today would be the first day she truly believed her life was changing. She arrived at the foundation's temporary office in an old brick building downtown. Mr. Lewis met her at the entrance, his smile warm and genuine. He guided her through the open plan room where a few volunteers typed on laptops and pinned up charts of student names. Marina's heart swelled. She had never worked with so many people on one project. She realized this was more than a scholarship fund, it was a chance to build something lasting for young people like herself. He sat her at a desk and introduced her to the team. Marina knows the struggle, he told them. She lived it. She will help shape our program so it truly serves those in need. The volunteers nodded and smiled. Marina felt a flutter in her chest. She remembered her own nights worrying about bills while classmates joked and studied. Now she could spare others that pain. For weeks, Marina and the team designed application forms, set criteria, and planned a mentorship program. She wrote essay questions that would let students share their dreams. She suggested interviews to learn about their challenges. Each day, she remembered Lily's drawing of the umbrella, how she felt safe under its protection. She wanted the scholarship to be that umbrella for others. Meanwhile, her own life gained stability. The bank cleared the check from Mr. Lewis, and she paid her rent on time. She used a little extra to buy groceries and treat herself to a warm meal once a week. She called her cousin and thanked her for offering help. Then she gently said no, proud that she could stand on her own. She also enrolled in a community college course in social work, her heart set on helping people. One morning, as she sat in a classroom of other adult learners, she felt a sense of belonging. The teacher asked each student to share why they chose the course. When it was her turn, Marina held the scholarship packet in her lap. She told the class how a stranger's kindness had opened a door for her, and how she now helped others walk through that door too. Her classmates listened with respect. Some had tears in their eyes. Marina felt her purpose deepen. Back at the foundation office, preparations began for the first fundraiser. Marina helped design invitations and plan a simple ceremony in a local community hall. She chose photos of smiling students and quotes about hope. She met with caterers to decide on light snacks and tea. She practiced arranging the daisies and roses in small vases for each table. She imagined people mingling, sharing stories, and pledging support for the fund. On the day of the event, Marina woke early and dressed in a soft blue dress that matched her eyes. She braided her hair carefully and tied it with a ribbon. She looked at Lily's drawing still taped to her mirror. Then she whispered, "This one's for you, Lily." She slipped the drawing into her purse and headed to the hall. The community hall buzzed with activity. Volunteers set up tables, hung banners, and lit the room with soft lights. Local musicians tuned their instruments in a corner. As guests arrived, teachers, business owners, and families, Marina greeted them at the door with a warm smile and a program booklet. They thanked her for her work, calling her inspiring and brave. Marina felt shy but proud. Mr. Lewis stood by the stage, talking with a small group of supporters. He spotted Marina and waved her over. He took her hand and said, "Ready?" Her heart raced. She nodded. He squeezed her hand gently. She walked to the podium as the musicians played a quiet melody. All eyes turned to her. She took a slow breath and looked out at the audience. Faces glowed in the lamplight. She felt her hands tremble. She cleared her throat softly. "Good evening," she began. Her voice was steady, full of warmth. "Thank you all for being here." She paused and smiled. "A year ago, I was standing in my own kitchen, worrying I would lose my home and my chance at college. I never imagined that a stranger's simple act of kindness would change my life." She told them about the night she invited Mr. Lewis and Lily in from the rain. She described the tea, the pancakes, and Lily's drawing of the umbrella. She spoke of how she never asked his name or his story, only offered what she could, a warm place and a caring heart. Then she explained how Mr. Lewis revealed himself, forming the Horizon Hope Foundation. She shared how she joined to help others like herself. The audience sat in silence, listening. Marina's voice softened. "Tonight, We launch the first scholarships. We will honor students who face hardship but dream big. We will mentor them, guide them, and let them know they are not alone." She paused, glancing at the stacks of application forms on a table behind her. "I stand here because someone believed in me. Now, I believe in you." Applause filled the hall. Marina felt tears of joy sting her eyes. Mr. Lewis stepped onto the stage beside her and held up a hand. "We have already raised enough for 5 scholarships tonight," he announced. Gasps of excitement followed. Guests began to cheer and stand in ovation. Marina felt her heart swell. After the ceremony, guests moved to mingle around tables. Marina walked through the room, chatting with teachers who asked how they could recommend students, and with local business owners who pledged donations. A young woman approached and said, "Marina, when I saw your name on the invitation, I was curious. Now, I want to volunteer as a mentor." Marina's eyes lit up. "Thank you," she said softly, hugging her new friend. Later, as the event wound down, Mr. Lewis found Marina by the door. He gave her a rose from the final bouquet. "You did this," he said, his voice full of pride. "You turned kindness into hope for many." Marina accepted the rose and looked at him. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "You gave me the chance." He shook his head and smiled. "You gave the chance. I only provided the resources." They stood together in the quiet hall as the last guests departed. Marina folded up the ribbons and programs. She felt a sense of completion, and yet she knew this was only the beginning. That night, back in her apartment, Marina placed the new rose in a jar beside Lily's drawing and the daisies. She gazed at the trio of flowers, daisies, single rose, and now this new blue man felt a deep peace. She lay on her couch and thought of the journey. She had walked through fear, worry, and doubt. She had offered herself to strangers and received far more in return. She had found a purpose greater than her own survival. In the coming weeks, she would read scholarship essays, meet students, and share her story over and over. She would mentor them through challenges and triumphs. She would see their smiles light up when they realized someone believed in them. She would continue her own studies and perhaps one day teach others herself. As she drifted off to sleep, Marina whispered a promise to the quiet room. "I will carry this kindness forward." And somewhere, she felt sure, Lily and Mr. Lewis would hear her promise and smile. In that moment, the small apartment felt full of light, as if the umbrella in Lily's drawing had grown large enough to shelter not just one young girl, but an entire future, and Marina knew her own life was just beginning.